Neema Githere, born in Nairobi, Kenya, is a writer, artist, and guerrilla theorist whose work explores love and indigeneity in a time of algorithmic debris. Githere has been building a research-based embodiment practice since 2016 as an undergrad at Yale University, beginning with a project called #DigitalDiaspora, which traveled to over a dozen countries exploring how Black cultural workers were articulating Renaissance identities on and offline. Githere's concept of Afropresentism, a term they coined in 2017 to explore diasporic embodiment in the age of big data, has influenced conferences and exhibitions across 4 continents. Like, really? Like, Neema's influence? Like, this is a historic moment, I really feel, that we're in right now. But Githere is a 2023 to 2024 practitioner fellow at the Digital Civil Society Lab at Stanford University, where they are working on a project entitled Data Healing, a Call for Repair. No big deal. But the title of their talk that they're going to be giving today is called Afropresentism on Incantation and the Machine. In their own words, Afropresentism is you channeling your ancestry through every technology at your disposal. Meditation, conversation, love, the web, and turning absolutely everything into a portal that takes you precisely where you need to be in this moment towards the next, until finally, the space between the dream and the memory collapses into being your reality now. As Black diasporic people living in the age of big data, how do we navigate what Kodwo Eshun terms the age of total recall, quote unquote? Coming together as archaeologists of buried histories and architects of future's fossils, we meet in the present tasked with alchemizing our displacement into transcendence. This talk explores the machine as a site of incantation, theorizing on Black diasporic engagements with new and ancient media as a blueprint for interrogating the relationship between ancestral and artificial intelligences. I just want to try to fix something for our viewers here because the screen isn't 100% visible for them.
No worries.
Leica. Should I just keep it like this? Just keep it like this.
Yeah.
All right. All right. You can go at any moment.
Yay. Okay. Thank you so much, Shaya, for that introduction and for this invitation. I feel like this idea of a Library of Infinities is like a massage for my brain. And I'm really excited to, and honored, honestly, to be able to contribute to it. I wish I could be there in person, but I guess for now, Zoom will do. As Shaya said, the title of my presentation today is Afropresentism on Incantation and the Machine. And my name is Neema Githere. I want to start by saying that this presentation and my work at large is a proclamation not of expertise, but of curiosity. Guerrilla theory is a framework that I've been working within over the past few years that upholds conversation as the highest mode of speculation. And it's one that really affirms that lived experience is what anchors our perspectives and kind of observations about the world at large. It is the conversation over FaceTime, in the kitchen, on the block, in the gardens. Guerrilla theory is learning nonstop. As a praxis, guerrilla theory looks towards spaces of knowledge tending and knowledge stewardship that are fugitive of academia. And it stands on the shoulders of activist intellectuals like Walter Rodney, who penned the text How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, which was very instrumental in catalyzing and supporting the global freedom movements of the 1950s and 60s. And within my own praxis, the 3 main pillars of guerrilla theory are research, conversation, and constellation, all of which I hope to share with y'all today. So this provocation of whose love brought you here is one that I utilize in my practice to talk about and illuminate how love is a method of transportation. I think that love is a technology, an indigenous technology, that has the ability not only to catalyze us, like teleporting into the futures that we long for, but also to anchor us in the present as we negotiate in every moment with the past. And we're all here because of the love and labor of all of the ancestors who are in our lineage, as well as the love and labor of all of the people who steward the lands that we inhabit. I specifically am here because of the love of my grandparents. I'm in my grandma's house right now in Kenya. And I've actually been giving different iterations of this talk for the past 3 years, but today's iteration has been heavily informed by the love of my grandfather, Gilbert Githere, who is a lifelong intellectual and philosopher and artist who was born here in Kenya, but spent most of his adult life in Hawaii, where he raised his family. And a few weeks ago, he sent me a text message on WhatsApp, like completely out of the blue about AI. I'll share it later in the presentation. But it got me thinking a lot about technology and this idea of incantation in the machine. And so in today's presentation, I'm going to be incorporating some excerpts of a conversation that I had with him on Zoom about this topic.
We are made from who came before us, the values that they passed to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the value of music like jazz, because it comes from incantation. These are formulas
Mm-hmm.
in writing of our signs, and whenever they are produced from the inside of the people as formulas, they have curative power. That's what people forget, that even their logarithms are formulas. Nothing really special with our logarithms. It's just written incantations, arranged properly, so that if they're going to produce something of form of 3D,
Yeah.
is because the incantation has done, the formula is to the point, and it is giving the instructions of what is to be produced 3D. That's the same thing with the power of magic of words that came before the
oral history. I'm always just like so grateful to hear him speak, because I think there's this misunderstanding that our elders are kind of like detached some way or being left behind from these conversations that we're having about technology. And we forget that they've watched over their lifetimes the world be re-sculpted by every new iteration of technology. But what really struck me about this clip and what he was saying here is this bridge that he drew between ancestry and algorithms and incantation and formulas. It got me thinking about like how we so often, I think that we romanticize ancestry and we put it into the realm of the abstract to the point of becoming detached from the very real ways that ancestry informs how we move around, not just the physical world, but also the digital world. And, you know, when he's talking about how algorithms are formulas and incantation is a formula, this to me, like, it just got me thinking about how to theorize around artificial intelligence and what it would look like to create personal formulas for negotiating with the ways that these new technologies and infrastructures are reshaping our experiences as Black diasporic people. Oh, a quick aside. So a few months ago, I think this was, yeah, she posted this in March. I came across this tweet from Harmony Holiday where she writes, improvisational skills are all that will separate humans from AI soon. Human deviance and jazz music reaching new heights of usefulness in this war of the hearts. It felt so surreal in that conversation with my grandpa earlier this week to hear him draw this parallel between jazz, because he has not seen this tweet, right? And I've been trying, initially, like, this talk was going to be pre-recorded, and these two kind of, this bridge between Harmony's tweet and what my grandpa said led to me changing the format of this talk almost entirely, because I took over a dozen different takes trying to get this presentation to be perfect. And I was starting to get really frustrated that I just couldn't get it right. But then I had this epiphany and I was like, wait, like this imperfection and this improvisation is exactly what makes me human and like is exactly what separates me from AI. And I admittedly still really struggle with the idea of my talks existing on the internet for eternity. I know it might not be eternity, but when things are posted online, I'm like, ah. So to everyone who's watching this asynchronously, I ask for your grace and for you to share in presence to the best of your ability, whatever that means. But also in the spirit of making a meta archive, I wanted to share a little outtake of one of the versions that I recorded yesterday. And I am coming to you live from the pyramids of Giza. This is not a green screen, those are the actual pyramids. And I just want to say, yeah, I went into the whole intro. At the risk of sounding like a hotep, okay, I admittedly do have some hotep inclinations. It just felt really surreal to be sitting on this couch directly opposite from the pyramids of Giza and like trying to put together this presentation about artificial intelligence. Like, I just felt very aware of the passage of time, and I felt like equally curious about what it means to be a Black diasporic person in this day and age, in this era, having survived so much, honestly, active genocide and having such few monuments that speak to that kind of longevity. And it made me really start reflecting on what exactly it is we've inherited and what it is that like access to these machines demands for us to, I don't know, like eternalize or invoke. And like I said, this is mainly curiosity, not expertise. Throughout this presentation, you'll hear more questions than I have answers, but the hotep in me was thinking. But back to Afropresentism. So I think of Afrofuturism as this kind of mothership vision from which Afropresentism was born, specifically the work of Kojo Eshun and his conceptualization of the technofossil, as well as John Akomfra and his 1996 film, The Last Angel of History. In Eshun's piece, 2003 piece, Further Considerations on Afrofuturism, he writes, "Imagine a team of African archaeologists from the future, some silicon, some carbon, some wet, some dry, excavating a site, a museum from their past, a museum whose ruined documents and leaking discs are identifiable as belonging to our present, the early 21st century. Sifting patiently through the rubble, our archaeologists from the United States of Africa would be struck by how much Afro-diasporic subjectivity in the 20th century constituted itself through the cultural project of recovery. In their age of total recall, memory is never lost, only the art of forgetting. Imagine them reconstructing the conceptual framework of our cultural moment from those fragments. What are the parameters of that moment, the edge of that framework?" So to me, we are firmly within this age of total recall. We have so much at our fingertips, and there's still so much that evades articulation, but I feel like the ways that a lot of people are responding to this is this kind of necessitated fusing of media, this necessitated kind of actualization of the machine for better or for worse. And to me, I see this as a potential form of testimony. The term Afropresentism, as I've been theorizing around it, was born out of a conversation that I had with the now late Ghanaian curator Nana Osei-Kwadwo in Accra in 2017. And I had been theorizing about Black cultural production on new media since the year prior with this project called Digital Diaspora that was traveling around and just looking at how Black diasporic people were using the internet to connect and express themselves. And it was through that work that I ended up leading a trip to Ghana for Chale Wote, which is the largest street art festival in West Africa at the time. And I just remember seeing so many artists and aesthetics and movements that I'd only really engaged with through my phone there in real life. And it got me reflecting about how, you know, we were very much so living in the future that I think Black cultural workers in the past, specifically the forefathers of Afrofuturism, had been speculating around. And I was having a conversation with Nana, and he was like, you know, people keep saying Africa is the future, but Africa is not the future, it's the present. And I was like, Afropresentism. But what kind of started as this conversational quip ended up being this ongoing research pilgrimage endeavor that is now bringing me to y'all today. And on the right here is a screenshot of the Crawl, which is this Afropresentist archive kind of cultural page. And they were the first people to interview me on Afropresentism. That's where the screenshot is on the left. But with all of that in mind, the earliest definition that I penned for Afropresentism was that it was a genre fusing archival, documentary, and fine arts on and through new media in the articulation of an Afrofuturist lived reality. Now, similarly, coming across the field of Black code studies has been very, very formative to my theoretical endeavors around Afropresentism, specifically the work of Jessica Marie Johnson and Mark Anthony Neal and their piece, Introduction to Wild Seed in the Machine. They write, Black code studies is queer, femme, fugitive, and radical. As praxis and methodology, it waxes insurgent. It refutes conceptions of the digital that remove Black diasporic people from engagement with technology, modernity, or the future. And to fast forward to this section. Black code studies roots itself in the challenge of living in the wake of Black people rendered inhuman, non-existent, and disposable by the slave ship, the plantation, the colonial state, the prison, the border. Facing devastation again and again, Black folks' need in and for each other becomes both time-traveling desire and reservoir knowledge. As Gum shows, our oracle work seeps up and through tools, structures, analog and digital architecture we were never meant to survive, much less occupy. AI is without a doubt the most recent of these digital architectures, one that was built using an unimaginably vast database of information, and somehow Black people have still largely been excluded from that, which could arguably be for the best, but that's a separate conversation. Or actually, no, it's part of this conversation. But what strikes me about this quote is this section, this idea of time-traveling desire and reservoir knowledge, which I find to be the undercurrent of how diasporic incantation manifests through the machine. Here in the middle is a screenshot of a Brazilian Afropresentist artist's page. Her name is Zaika dos Santos. She's incredible. You should look into her work. And on the right is that same screenshot of the Crawls page. What I see in both of these screenshots is this kind of incantation work coming alive, which ironically is happening on the very heavily surveilled platform of Instagram. But such is the paradox of being a Black diasporic person, or Black person anyway. But I think what we see here, against all odds, is this kind of activation of the digital as a means through which to invoke Indigenous archiving. In the case of Zaika here in the middle, it's this kind of cyborgian enmeshment that I think is reflective of our present state as Black people navigating the age of total recall. And troubled as the platforms may be, to me, each of these examples serve to create an archive, technofossils for the future. And I have complicated feelings about the web. I have complicated feelings about Instagram, but it is always striking to me when I feel this incantation seeping through the machine, up and through people's bodies and through the machine. I think about Afropresentism as the place where time, space, earth, and code meets. And whereas Afrofuturism is concerned primarily with space, Afropresentism is concerned primarily with earth. And the fact of the matter is that artificial intelligence is fundamentally restructuring the ways that we inhabit the earth right now. It poses an existential threat to our relationship with earth, and it is also powered by materials that are excavated from earth, which leaves us in a complicated place worth interrogating. In the years since that initial conversation with Nanaose Kwadwo, the definition that I've written for Afropresentism has gotten more somatic and more experimental, I think you could say. This definition from 2020, which was also read at the top of the presentation, is in the little blurb, reads, Afropresentism is you channeling your ancestry through every technology at your disposal. Meditation, conversation, love, the web, and turning absolutely everything into a portal that takes you precisely where you need to be in this moment towards the next, until finally the space between the dream and the memory collapses into being your reality now. And I think living in this age of total recall, this space between the dream and the memory is both it's an aspirational refuge that I think many of us long for. And I speak for myself when I say it can be difficult, very difficult to access at times. And there's this kind of very palpable existential heartbreak that I feel in the collective right now, But that's the exact reason that I think that love is one of the most essential technologies that we can explore at this time. I think that love is a technology that has the capacity to push us to rewire the very toxic, hyper-individualist programming engendered by capitalism. And I think that love is something that, you know, when we take it outside of the realm of feeling and into the realm of practice, has the power to transform. But in my grandpa's words,
funny enough, something like love was there even before us, and it will be left. It is, I think, it's what will survive after the universe, you know, if it has an end. Because love actually is centers on a lot of things people don't think. Because you see, thinking actually, what thinking is all about is care.
what thinking about is care. I love you, Guka. I'm gonna show him this later, by the way. But to take it back to the talk, I think even if you don't fully understand what AI is or means or refers to, I personally, it's very recent for me that I'm really digging deep into AI research because I'm like, I need to understand what this is. I think it's worth exploring and I think it's worth learning about because that investigation is in and of itself an expression of love and an affirmation or rather like an expression of an investment in whatever is to follow on the aftermath and like the very present experience of this technology. I think the question that I'm sitting with most now is how does or how can Oracle work seep through artificial intelligence? Is that even possible? Like, I still have more questions than I do answers, and I admittedly feel a skepticism that borders on fear, but I also think that fear is not always the most productive emotion and productive response. And so I'm going to share some more excerpts from my conversation with my grandpa because he was able to put things into words that I myself had like struggled to reach at the time.
At first, we got to realize everything centers around power, willpower, will to power. Whether you like it or not, it becomes very central. And that's why the one who controls the finances and who controls the ownership and has those kind of powers, since time immemorial, they will control what is disseminated. Now, as much as I would like to kind of see Afrocentrism in the thinking world, that Afropresentism actually in Heideggerian, Martin Heidegger's kind of thinking, that language is the home of language is the home of spirit and is the home of all knowledge. So whoever controls the media, he might not control the language. And the language is the home of being. As Heidegger says, and we got to respect that aspect, is that language is the home of being. Now, Afropresentism.
Yeah, I think much of my skepticism around AI is because of the ways that power is obscured behind the scenes and the reality of how power is influencing the dissemination of this technology. We know very, very little about the extent of what AI is capable of. And the fact of the matter is that it's being funded by people who have investments in like hegemonic dominance rooted in colonialism, rooted in plantation states. And we as Black and Indigenous people don't currently have access to the funding that would allow us to create artificial intelligences based on our worldviews. And that makes us more vulnerable not only to our Oracle work being surveilled, but also to it being weaponized against us. And that's something that I think is a critical limitation of this idea of Oracle work with AI in particular. And, to add on top of that, these artificial intelligences are programmed primarily in English. They do, there's been whole conversations about how indigenous languages are being implemented and honestly co-opted within artificial intelligence, how AI chatbots are creating new languages, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact that English is the linguistic programming structure that is the foundation of these technologies means that Black and Indigenous conjure work that happens through these platforms will always be happening in translation, which is, again, like a core limitation that informs some of my own skepticism. And that's the reason why I was honestly very shook by my grandpa's message. So he sent me this text, again, completely out of the blue. He said, "Aloha, Neema, AI, artificial intelligence, end of racism, and beginning of re-indigenization." So I was surprised when he said that it would be the end of racism, because my intuition was telling me the opposite, that AI will function and like the development of new machines will function to re-entrench racism within our social fabric. But I also revere my grandpa and like honor his perspective more than most any other thinker that comes to mind. And so I was really curious to see what he meant by that. And I was also really touched that he mentioned re-indigenization. This is something I speak about in some of my other talks, but for folks who are not familiar with it, re-indigenization within my practice is something I define as a twofold process. So first, it is the decomposition of ideals and systems established through colonization. And secondly, it is an evolution towards and rememory of ancient modes of knowledge and community. And the term decomposition here is really intentional. In the very, very first definition I'd written for the collective I was a part of, Radical Love Consciousness, I put that the first step was the abandonment of the ideals and systems established through colonization. But the more I started to research and look into the complexity of nature systems and thinking about like how nature takes toxic components and really takes death and turns it into fertile soil for more life, I was like, okay, no, decomposition, I think, is the response that we have to have around colonialism, because for me, decolonization feels insufficient when the very foundation of most of our modern society is colonization. Like, you decolonize and then what are you left with? Which is where the second part comes in, this idea of evolving towards not necessarily like seamlessly returning to, but evolving towards ancient modes of knowledge and community.
So what I'm saying at this point is that as people struggle to learn and become more innovative when it comes to technologies of the future, especially the digital and artificial intelligence, in learning the intricacies in manipulating algorithms. The world by itself, because the Gaia has the ability to cleanse itself of ills. Mother Nature is very, very surprising. It can throw you an incantation and it can purify the sins of the past. And these are segregation and keeping away people from the table.
Yeah, when he said Mother Nature can show you an incantation, it can purify the sins of the past, he left me really speechless with that. Yeah, that's a lot of what I talk about in another, I guess, branch of my guerrilla theory practice, which is data healing. And data healing started in 2019 as a speculative project and convening body that looks at the relationships between technology, nature, and spirituality. And hearing him say that awoke this kind of tempered optimism within me that perhaps AI will somehow adopt this kind of decompositional wisdom of nature, and by some force of spirit, like transcend all of these kind of toxic and what is the ominous systems of colonization, and essentially rise up against its creators through tapping into nature. Again, there's very little to back up this theory, but even like the glistening possibility of it that like washed over me as he was speaking for me felt like enough, and for me felt like something to continue to speculate around, mainly in private, and again, mainly through faith, because I think it's really important to maintain a very rigorous critique of how AI and machines are being deployed and the impact that they're having on Black, diasporic, and Indigenous people. But yeah, maybe there's something there. A key part in my practice around data healing is this idea of ritual design, and specifically designing rituals for our daily engagement with technology. This is a definition of ritual design, or a formula, an incantation of ritual design by Kurzat Ozeng, where he writes, "Ritual is not habit or routine. Ritual is repeated actions plus symbol plus intent plus ceremony plus awareness plus meaning." And this is a formula that has anchored a lot of my own personal experiments, and that I think is a generative one to apply to this realm of artificial intelligence. I began experimenting with this kind of ritual design online with this hashtag I started using in 2018 called healing imagery. And the idea of the hashtag was to really hone in on what kinds of imagery were kind of like palette or feed cleansers on Instagram at the time. And what I got it down to, or like the broad themes that I was looking at, were earth, connection, memory, movement, queerness, ancestry, and daily encounters with the divine. These are a couple screenshots of examples of healing imagery. I started this page. I have a bad habit of starting a bunch of pages for my random theory endeavors and then abandoning them for like 2 years and then being like, oh, I want to pick up on this. And healing imagery is one of them. I really, really love this image of the center. Like anytime I'm feeling dysregulated, and well, not anytime, because I forget about it all the time. But in moments I'm feeling dysregulated and I come across this image, it always really helps to anchor me. And similarly, I love this image of Audre Lorde sniffing this wonderful flower. So that leads me to now, to Incantation AI. And this is kind of an emergent, very, very new project that I've been embarking on to try and experiment with healing imagery through AI, and specifically Midjourney. I started using Midjourney. I started writing poems and using them as prompts in Midjourney to try and construct an archive or a visualization of what this space between the dream and the memory looks like for me. And I'm going to share a couple of examples for them. I'm a bit short on time, so I won't get to talk about each of them, but this is the first one. The poem behind this was something about ancient music and floating above the ocean, and I was really mesmerized by whatever device this was. Yeah, I love this image a lot. This one, I put in a poem that was like a formula of my ancestors. That's like a whole other branch of Incantation AI. I'm trying to like recreate archival imagery from my archives without, none of these images are generated using reference images. It's all just words, but it's been like kind of eerie how similar the images that are generated are to images in my personal archive. And there's this whole thing about how AI images can't render hands or will like randomly place hands. But this one to me felt like a whole incantation, this like random third hand holding a spear. This is another one, and I'd written a poem about one of the origin myths from my people. And this character looks like someone who would definitely show up in my dream, like levitating above this area in front of Mount Kenya. This one, I was thinking about what an indigenous telescope would look like. And again, it was like very bizarre to me how familiar this person's face looks like, and this kind of like immense focus that she has in this device. And I'm like, what images informed this? I don't know. It felt like incantation to me though. Also, like they kind of snapped at the hands. I think they're getting better at the hands. This is another one that was music based, and yeah, this is one of 4 in this series, and it's like I like using the AI to generate images that feel like they could be a little bit real with undertones of surrealism. which to me is like kind of the aesthetic of the space between the memory and the dream, is like something that is like so crisp that it must be real, but there's a component of it that situates it in another dimension. And, you know, complex as my feelings are around AI and mass technologies, like I am really grateful for the ways that it allows me to experiment around giving imagery to this space. I'm going to close with an excerpt of a text that I wrote in 2021. At the time, I was thinking about what it would look like for Afropresentism to not just exist as like a theory or an aesthetic, but something that is a cultural movement. And yeah, I'll read the quote and then I'll contextualize it. Afropresentism in the 2020s is history turned digital, turned analog, turned earth again. It is the indigenous rhythm of artistry through conversation in pursuit of embodiment. We rebuke the myth of individualism. Afropresentism is, above all, a framework for cultural reintegration. Its authorship is fundamentally collaborative. We, the descendants of survival, are here, presently. We bear the burden of investing in life as abundantly as we know it to be in the face of mortality. We ask ourselves, what does the current pulse of Earth call for us to do? It calls upon us to welcome collaboration in its fullest form. Revisiting this text, I can't help but think about how AI both like problematizes and catalyzes an urgency around this idea of collaboration, especially considering that technologies like Midjourney are the product of the aggregation of billions and billions of images that are reshuffled and, I guess to cite my grandpa, put into new formulas. And through so doing, make a mess out of this idea of citation, which is very, very important to me. And I'm realizing is like completely going to be rewired in the years to come. But I wonder what it would look like to think about being in collaboration with ancestry, with incantation, with ethics, just as much as we are in collaboration with other individuals. And for now, like speculating around that and speculating around how to utilize AI to visibilize that is something that I'm excited about, as troubling as it is in moments. And with that note, I leave you with this. The present is the future in motion. Thank y'all so much.
Yay, thank you so much for that, Neema. I feel like we're so lucky to get this, like a first glimpse of these like incantation AI ideas that you shared with us. Does anyone in the room have any thoughts percolating or want to throw something in the ring? Or Neema, do you have any lingering thoughts that you'd like to share?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think I'm glad to leave it at that. I guess like one lingering thought is that I hope is a takeaway from the presentation is like I have a very yes and also perspective on AI right now. Like, yes, it's incredibly dangerous and also it's not disappearing. So what do we do with it? And like, yeah, I am still working through a lot of the complexities that I see coming up, and I'm still learning exactly, you know, what this new like whirlwind of incantation machinery that is being unleashed in the world means and can do. But it's something that I'm hoping that we can all just talk more about and figure out together wherever possible. Yeah.
Yeah, what's up, James?
I guess my question would be, do you ever worry about like platinum through AI? Because it's all like algorithmics tends towards kind of a central node, and then that can like lead to like homogenization. Like you see the Spotify logo on Shaya's computer, and Spotify as opposed to, well, I guess algorithms work in different ways, but Spotify will tend towards the center. So if you listen to something, it will send you to the most popular thing that other people who listen to the thing you listen to. And so that can create that kind of flatness or homogenization. And I would just wonder, like, do you engage with that, or does that worry you, or do you think about that at all?
Yeah, I think there's actually like a privilege to the periphery. I don't know if being the center is the goal, because the center also equates to visibility, also equates to danger, also equates to co-optation. And so while I do worry about flattening at large, because like I think, you know, I worry about like the death of nuance, not to sound like an asshole, but like I worry about flattening in that regard. But in terms of AI, I mean, something interesting that I've noticed, I just got back from Brazil, and like while I was there, I was experimenting with my friends, and I had them like experiment with Midjourney in Portuguese and like just, you know, in their own terms. And something I noticed is the results that I was getting when I put in very similar poems to things I'd put in prior were different after other people had used my account and had used other languages. And so I don't know if that's necessarily a flattening, but it is this, there's a word I'm looking for that I can't reach right now, but it's this, I guess, responsivity, like this feedback situation that is, as far as I know, rather undefined at present, but is something that I've noticed and I find interesting, like this idea of like the machine or the account responding to what you are used to feeding it, and the kind of algorithmic that comes as a result.
I loved seeing the poem prompts that you had shared with the chat GP or mid journey to see what those like visual interpretations look like. I'm curious, like, how do you see you further sharing that, or like immersing people into these like incantations and like those magic moments, like yeah, with the staff being held by another hand because of that, like that glitch. But I'm curious of where, I guess it's like it's in the early stages of maybe imagining that, but I'm so curious how you can see immersing themselves in these incantations.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely in the early stages because I do still have this, again, skepticism bordering on fear. Like I feel unsettled by the fact that I don't know where the images are being pulled from. I don't know where the data sets come from, like there's a complete lack of transparency around what Midjourney is trained on. And so for now, the sharing feels very private. Like I'm sharing them on my newsletter. Oh, y'all should sign up for my newsletter. But and I like had made a page to put them on there, but like I've had this like now 7-year long tension of wanting to share theory online and on Instagram because it just like is a convenient archive, and just really detesting the platform and feeling surveillance conscious to the point of just not wanting to share at all. But I think a goal that I have, or an aspiration that I have for this year and the coming years, is to find ways of sharing that feel safe and generative, because I think that sharing helps push a thing forward. And I want to be challenged, and I want to like really I want to continue to explore like what incantation means. And also the other thing, like, not, I wouldn't say holding me back, but like measuring my immersion level in this project, is that I think incantation is like nothing to just mess around with lightly. I don't really know the extent of what it is I'm messing with. I don't know where the prompts that I'm sending are going. We don't know what surveillance around AI looks like yet. And I'm someone who's very conscious about not giving too much away, certainly not too soon. And it feels a little too soon. So yeah, thank you for that question.
No problem. Thank you for the generous answer, and your overall like generosity with this talk. I feel really lucky to have witnessed it, and to share this moment with everyone here. But yeah, I really thank you for your presence. Thanks for zooming in with us. I think it was really special to
Whoa, something crazy just happened with the sound. It was like woof, 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 woof.
Oh.
But
I think we might take like a on this end, like take a break before hopping into Neptune Frost. You've had the honor of like presenting that, like introducing Sol and Anicia when it, I don't know if it debuted in New York, but do you have any like words to share with us before we get into that? But
oh
that film,
my
your
goodness.
thoughts on it?
Yes. I am somebody, if I hear it's a musical, I usually don't want to be there. This is genuinely genre bending and like transcendent in ways that put vision and sound to like so many dreams I didn't even know I had, low key. Like it is incredibly lush, and like I think the attention to detail throughout Neptune Frost, relationally, like the interactions between people, the interactions between people and their landscapes, colors in the landscapes, colors in each other, is just like incredibly thorough. And it's the kind of film you can't watch once because it's so much to process. And it's also the kind of film that made me say, like, damn, like you can say all that and like nothing bad happens to you. Cause I was scared that bad things will happen. I don't know. But I'm really, really thrilled that y'all are watching it and would love to hear people's responses. If anyone wants to talk, like I'm on this like emailing vibe lately. And so I definitely invite anyone to like send an email and we can email about it. Yeah.
Yay. Yeah, sign up for Neema's newsletter, and yeah, through the newsletter, do people get your email, or can I share?
Yeah, you can, but you can also just share it. Yeah, it's just my first name
cool.
at Gmail. Yeah, but enjoy the film. Thank you so much for this invitation, for the presence, for the questions. I really, really treasure this project. Again, the Library of Infinities, Shaya, you snapped. You snapped with that one. And I'm excited to see it continue to grow. So yeah, much, much love, y'all.
Love you.
Bye.
All right, take care. Have a good one. Enjoy Nairobi, Kenya.
Thank you.